Hi, I'm Savannah. My sister banned me from her party and mocked my daughter right in front of everyone, laughing as if we didn't belong. I felt humiliated, erased, powerless, but just when I thought everything was lost, the driver turned to me and said, "This house is yours." How far would someone go to take what's rightfully mine, and would I finally claim it? The table was nearly set. Forks on the left, knives on the right, like Mom had taught me, back when she still pretended to care. I was placing the last napkin when I heard the front door swing open harder than usual. Heavy steps stormed through the hallway. Then, like a slap across a calm afternoon, Miranda burst in. She didn't even look at me, just slammed a thick folder on the table so hard the salt shaker tipped over. "Your kid took $25,000 from Dad's safe," she barked. "Useless girl. What kind of mother are you?" Time stopped. The clink of glass stilled, the hum of the ceiling fan suddenly loud in the silence. I felt my breath catch, like it didn't know whether to keep going. I turned to Jonah, my son, 16, awkward, quiet. His face went pale, eyes darting between everyone like he didn't know where to land. My father, sitting at the head of the table, didn't say a word. Just turned his face slightly, like I was a bitter breeze he didn't want hitting his skin. I looked at Miranda, waiting for the punchline. There had to be one. But she was serious. Furious. I had no idea what she was talking about, I said inside my head. "Jonah? My Jonah? A thief?" I tried to speak, but my throat had dried up. The only thing louder than Miranda's voice was the memory of every time I'd been blamed, scapegoated, shoved aside in this house. And here it was again, center stage. My mother sat across from me. Didn't flinch. Didn't speak. Her silence said everything. Miranda kept throwing words like knives, no space between them, no room to think. I tried to say, "Let's talk about this calmly," but my voice cracked like cold wood. Nobody heard me. Or maybe they did, and chose not to care. Then came the proof. Or what she claimed was proof. Miranda yanked out a bank receipt and flung it toward me. It slid across the polished table and stopped at my plate. Jonah's name was on it. Clear as day. I picked it up. Hands shaking. The numbers blurred, but I made out the date. That was the day I went to the bank alone, to open a personal account. I remembered it clearly, not just because I was starting over financially, but because the bank manager had whispered something strange as he led me to the vault area. "Vault ready," he had said. Like it was code. Like someone else had arranged something. Jonah wasn't with me that day. Hadn't even known I was going. He didn't have the safe code. He barely knew how to navigate his checking account. Something wasn't right. I squinted at the details. This wasn't Jonah's doing. It couldn't be. Someone was using his name, his identity. But how? Why? Miranda stood with her arms crossed, like she finally caught me in the act of being the failure she'd always said I was. "You're always defending the wrong people," she snapped. My father muttered, like he couldn't be bothered to say it out loud, "You brought this embarrassment into our home." That one stung more than it should have. Because it wasn't just about Jonah. It was about me. It always was. Jonah's lip trembled. "I didn't take anything, Mom. I swear." I believed him. Not just because I'm his mother. But because I knew that look in his eyes. The sheer confusion. The shame of being accused for something you don't even understand. I looked around the room and felt the weight of a lifetime hit me all at once. No one was in my corner. Not even the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. "You never change," Miranda muttered. "Always the drama queen." Then she walked out. I sat there, frozen. The walls around me had heard this story before. Only the script changed. I stood up. Picked up my purse. Took Jonah's hand. We walked out without a word. Once outside, under the dull Indiana sky, I bent down slightly and whispered, "They never wanted the truth. Just someone to blame." Jonah looked up. "Are we in trouble?" "No," I said. "But we're going to find out what really happened." The driveway gravel crunched under our feet as we walked away. They wanted a villain. Fine. I'd show them who the real ones were. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. My body felt heavy, but my mind was sharp. No dreams, just the echo of Miranda's voice from yesterday still ringing in my ears. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long while, staring at the floor, trying to understand how things had unraveled so quickly. Jonah's voice from last night still lingered too. "I didn't take anything, Mom." That sentence kept me going. I moved quietly around the kitchen, preparing a simple breakfast. Toast. Scrambled eggs. Jonah sat down in silence. I handed him his plate and finally said, "We're going to fix this." He didn't ask how. He didn't need to. The way I said it, he knew I meant it. As I grabbed my purse, I felt the weight of something in the side pocket. I reached in and pulled out the silver pocket watch. My father's. He gave it to me years ago, said it meant I could be trusted with time. Funny. Now it just felt like a reminder of how quickly trust turns to betrayal. I dropped Jonah off at school with a kiss on the forehead and a promise, "No matter what they say, I believe you." Then I drove straight to the First Indiana Bank. Pulling into the lot, I muttered to myself, "They called me useless. Let's see how useless I really am." Inside, the bank was still waking up. The air smelled like weak coffee and printer toner. A few tellers behind the glass spoke in low tones. I approached the front desk, keeping my voice steady. "I need to review a withdrawal made under my son's name." The receptionist blinked twice, then nodded. "One moment, ma'am." I stood there, watching the digital clock tick upward. It felt like every second came with a weight on my chest. Finally, I saw a familiar face. Mr. Larson. He had the same well-pressed shirt, same careful hair. But his eyes weren't as welcoming this time. They darted to the side when he recognized me. "Miss Hartley," he said with a forced smile. "Come with me." In his small, air-conditioned office, he offered me coffee. I declined. His desk was too clean. Sterile. Like he'd wiped it down just before I walked in. He sat across from me, folding his hands neatly. "There seems to be a misunderstanding," he began. "I'm sure there is," I replied. He blinked. "I'd like to see the withdrawal records under my son's name." He hesitated. "Of course. Quoted policy. Privacy concerns." "I'm a cosigner on the account," I reminded him. "And you know that." He gave in. Clicked through his screen. Printed a few pages. I scanned them fast, then stopped. There it was, Jonah's name. His signature. But the J. It curled the wrong way. He always looped the bottom, almost like a hook. This one didn't. I knew it immediately. Larson saw my reaction. His eyes twitched, just enough for me to catch. "Who authorized this?" I asked, calmly. He cleared his throat. "Your sister. Miranda. She brought in paperwork. Claimed it was for your father's medical expenses." My pulse slowed. I looked at him, dead in the eye. "I see." That was all I said. But the look I gave him must have said more. Because he shifted in his chair. "I'd also like to review the security footage," I added. "From the day of the withdrawal." Another pause. "I'm afraid the cameras were under maintenance that week." I leaned back. "That's convenient." He squirmed. "I can subpoena the footage," I said, voice flat. His mask cracked a little. Actually, he hesitated. "The footage exists. It's just been moved to our central server. For audit reasons." I stared at him. No reaction. He reached into his drawer and slid over a card. "I'll call you once I retrieve it." I stood. "I'm sure you will." The air felt thinner as I left the building. Outside, I didn't walk to the car, I marched. My heart was pounding, but not from fear. From fire. In the driver's seat, I gripped the wheel. My reflection in the rear-view mirror looked older than yesterday. Sharper. "So it wasn't Jonah," I whispered. "It was her." Miranda. It all came back. The smugness, the way she yelled over me, the convenient timing. Of course it was her. I wiped my face. Started the engine. "You wanted a villain, Miranda? Fine. But I'm coming for you with the truth." I picked up my phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in years. "Hi, Carla. I need advice on accessing bank records." "Yes. Legal advice." The truth was buried deep, but now, I had the shovel. The front door clicked shut behind me, and I dropped my keys on the counter like they weighed 10 pounds. I hadn't even taken my shoes off yet. My head was still full of that bank visit, the polished floor, the way the manager hesitated before answering me, how his eyes darted from my face to the paperwork like he already knew he was looking at something crooked. Jonah was still out, thankfully. No questions, no dinner small talk. Just me and this empty house, and the sound of the refrigerator humming like it had something to say. I grabbed a saucepan and started prepping dinner, not because I was hungry, but because it gave my hands something to do. The soup simmered while I moved in slow circles between the counter and the stove. Then the frame fell. No crash, just a soft thud. It had slipped from the magnet and landed face down on the tile. I bent down to pick it up. The photo behind the glass was faded, colors dulled by time. Me at 17, standing just to the left of Miranda. She was in the middle, of course. Our parents behind us. All of them looking somewhere else. That was the night everything changed, I said, barely above a whisper. 17. I remember every detail. It was my birthday. I'd made my own cake, store-bought mix, lopsided, with icing I'd whipped too long so it looked grainy. I set the table myself, folded the napkins like Mom did on holidays. I even lit candles. I kept looking at the clock like that would make them arrive faster. 6 o'clock. Then 7. Then 8. I told myself they were late. Maybe they stopped for something special. Maybe they were planning a surprise. But by 9, the icing had started to melt, and the candles burned too low to light again. I sat there, staring at my slice like it was going to explain something to me. Then I heard them in the hallway. Laughing. She was amazing tonight, Dad said. That second movement? Flawless. That recital meant everything to her, Mom added. I'm so glad we didn't miss it. They weren't talking about me. They weren't even thinking about me. That night, I stopped waiting. For cake. For love. For anyone to say we're proud of you. I learned what it meant to be in the room and still be unseen. I turned the photo over and set it back on the fridge. Face down. The soup hissed, boiling over the edge of the pot. I snapped back and turned off the burner, watching steam rise like it was angry. I slid down to the floor, back against the cabinet, and just sat there, breathing through it. All these years, I said aloud, I kept forgiving them because I wanted to believe I mattered. And that's the truth. It was never about money. Not really. The $25,000 was just a symbol. What really cut deep was the pattern, the way they made me invisible and called it love. I got up slowly and grabbed my journal from the drawer by the phone. I opened to a clean page and wrote, what I know. What I will no longer accept. Something cracked loose inside me, but it didn't feel like rage. It felt like stepping into daylight after too many years in the shade. Then came the knock. 3 sharp raps. I froze, pen still in hand. When I opened the door, she didn't even wait for an invitation. Miranda stepped in like she owned the air in the room. You've always been so dramatic, she said, dropping her purse on the table. I handled the withdrawal. It was Dad's money. I didn't move. You forged Jonah's name. That makes it mine. She snorted. You really think anyone's gonna believe that? I didn't blink. I don't need anyone to believe me. I need evidence. And I'm collecting it. For a second, she stopped smiling. Just 1 second, but I saw it. That little twitch at the corner of her mouth. The mask slipping. She grabbed her purse and walked back to the door. You're going to ruin what little you have left, Olivia. Then she was gone. I sat back down, staring at my tea. It was cold. Bitter. I thought about that 17-year-old girl, sitting in front of a melting cake, telling herself lies to make the silence bearable. That girl died the night no one came, I wrote in my journal. Then I paused. Thought of something I saw once on a dusty card in a bookstore. When you're not invited to the table, build your own. So I did. I started writing names, dates, times, amounts. All of it. Every detail I could remember, every crack in the lie they built. This wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming something they tried to take, my voice. My name. My place. They used to forget me. Now they'll remember. I pulled into my parents' driveway as the sun dipped low behind the trees, casting long shadows across the lawn. My heart hammered. Clenching the silver pocket watch in my coat pocket, I reminded myself, this night was mine too. I stepped through the front door into the dining room where the table was already set, family and a few guests seated. The soft clink of silverware and low voices filled the space. The air felt brittle. Miranda didn't look at me. Dad gave a stiff nod, as though I were a stranger walking in. I settled at a distant corner of the table, off to the side, no longer her favorite shadow. Juno cleared her throat and offered a blessing over dinner. I watched faces as the first course went by. Late in the meal, my phone buzzed. I glanced down, Mom calling. I silenced it, but her eyes snapped toward me. I felt a flash of something: betrayal? Contempt? June hurriedly excused herself, slipping out, phone pressed to her ear. From the hallway came her whisper, "Don't stir trouble. Just stay quiet." In the dining room, Miranda's lips twitched in a ghost of a smirk. That's when I knew this family's weapon was silence. But I had already begun to speak with action. Dessert came. A friend of theirs stood up and said, "And now, Olive and guest." The words cut me open. Olive and guest. Like I was an afterthought. I stood. My voice steady. "My name is Olivia Blythe." Miranda laughed. "We all know you as Olive," she said, sneering. My father opened his mouth, then closed it. Miranda countered, "You're nothing more than her guest." I sat again, my face calm, but inside, the fire burned. Later, I stepped into the kitchen to help with dishes. Miranda followed behind. She leaned in, voice low but cruel, "See? They don't even respect you enough to say your name." I turned slowly. I said quietly, "Maybe someday your name will carry weight without needing to steal mine." She rolled her eyes. "You want weight? Go chase a bank vault." I said nothing. I set down the plate, walked out. Not yelling. Not crying. Silent. The night air hit me when I reached the driveway. I drew a deep breath. They'd stripped dignity from me tonight, one insult at a time. But I would reclaim it, piece by piece. I touched the watch in my pocket, warm. Jonah, waiting in the car, asked softly, "Why did she call me a thief?" I looked to the rear window, watched light fade. I answered, "Some lies are loud. But truth is louder." I started the engine, the family home receding behind us. My journey had truly begun. I closed the door behind me and leaned against it for a long moment. My legs trembled. The confrontation tonight had stripped something from me I didn't know I'd held on to. In the dim glow of my study lamp, I sat down, opened the drawer where I kept letters I rarely read. My fingers trailed over envelopes before stopping at one in my father's handwriting, sealed but never mailed. I unfolded it, hands shaking. "I know you felt invisible, but I see you, always." Tears blurred the words. I paused, breathing hard, folding it gently as if it might tear under the weight of its meaning. I held it tight to my chest. He believed in me when no one else would. Late into the night, I rifled through old emails and messages on my phone. Among them, one from my ex-husband, a line I'd long forgotten, "I know you love harder than they see." My throat clenched. That message had been hidden deep, buried under years of silence and distance. It felt like a lifeline I almost lost faith in. I began typing a response, then stopped. I deleted the draft. Instead, I placed the letter and my phone side by side on the desk, silent witnesses to what I would not surrender. Morning came cold, but I rose early. In the kitchen, I toasted bread, scrambled eggs, brewed coffee. Jonah shuffled in, sleepy, and sat down. I slid his plate over and watched his eyes focus. He asked softly, "Mom, if they already think I'm guilty, does that make me one?" My heart stung. I knelt beside him, voice low, "No, sweetie. Lies don't change truth." He nodded, but his next words shook me, "Then why do they still believe them?" I held him close, my voice broke. "Because they forgot how to listen." I packed his backpack and drove to school. The city stirred as day broke. Near downtown, I passed billboards advertising bank vaults, secure deposits, vault ready, words I'd heard whispered before. They stabbed me. Families file in and out of those banks, trusting their identities would be safe. And here I was, someone who had to prove hers. My grip tightened around my father's letter in my bag. I vowed, I'll reclaim respect, not beg for it. I kissed Jonah's forehead at the school entrance and walked away with purpose. Back home, I laid out a folder on the desk, the letter, screenshots of emails, the dubious bank withdrawal slips. I scribbled a plan: contract a forensic handwriting analyst, interview bank staff, reach Zeke at the vault branch. I whispered into the empty room, "You called me useless. I will make you afraid to say it again." My shoulders squared. I shut the door to my office, locked it. The battlefield was drawn. I spread the papers across my desk, each one now felt like a puzzle piece that finally belonged. The letter from Dad. The bank withdrawal slip. The digital screenshots of Miranda's name tied to the transaction. It was all laid out like a silent storm ready to break. I kept thinking about the way Larson shifted in his seat when I questioned him at the bank. Something about that hesitation. The way his eyes avoided mine, like he was caught between policy and guilt. I picked up the phone and called Odessa. She and I grew up on the same street. We rode bikes in the summers, stole gum from the corner store once. She worked in investigative research now, mostly fraud and medical records. When I told her what I had, she didn't ask why, she just said, "Send me everything. I'll meet you tonight." I hung up and whispered to no one, "They won't see this coming." The bank smelled like cold printer ink and cheap floor polish. Mr. Larson looked startled to see me again, but said nothing as I followed him to the side office. A young clerk joined us, nervous, flipping through folders. I didn't waste time. "I'd like to review the original withdrawal documents," I said, calm but firm. Larson hesitated, then gave a nod. The clerk handed me a manila folder. Inside, Jonah's signature on file, and the one used on the withdrawal. I laid them side by side. The forgery was good. Almost impressive. But there were clear differences in the pressure of the strokes, the shape of the J. I'd studied my son's handwriting helping him with homework. I knew every curve. "This one," I said, tapping the forged line, "isn't Jonah's. It's mine." "Stolen." Larson paled. I can't believe, I didn't let him finish." "You better believe it." He backed off, muttering about needing to report to corporate. I didn't care. The seed of doubt was planted. And doubt spreads fast in quiet institutions. Back home, I powered up my laptop. Odessa had sent over metadata instructions. "Check the hidden headers," she wrote. I navigated through the bank's shared email folder I had access to when Dad's estate was under review. And there it was. A thread from Juno to Miranda. Subject line, "Keep Delaney quiet." One line hit like a slap, "She always spins victim mode, don't let her distract from the account logistics." They'd been talking about me like I was a glitch. A noise. Not a person. I screenshot the email. Timestamp. Sender. Everything. Sent it to Odessa. I leaned back in my chair. "So now you see," I said aloud. "The villain is closer than you think." The sun had just started to dip by the time Miranda showed up. I waited in the living room, evidence folder open on the coffee table. I didn't greet her. She barely sat down before I slid the forged slip and the email across to her. She blinked. Eyes darted between the pages. "That doesn't prove anything," she said, too quickly. "You called me useless," I said softly. "You erased my name. You used my son to erase me." Her face flushed. "You're overreacting. You have no proof." I stood up. Calm. Clear. "The proof is here. And I'm not walking away this time." She shouted something as I left the room. I didn't listen. The ones who shout loudest are often the ones afraid someone finally heard them. Later that night, I sat back at my desk. The drawer creaked open. I arranged everything again, evidence lined up in order, the forgery, the internal email, Jonah's bank slip. I drew a timeline on a yellow legal pad. Step 1, contact a forensic handwriting expert. Step 2, request full security footage from that bank visit. Step 3, email Clayton Rivas, Dad's old vault manager. I whispered the words like a vow, "Your vault is ready. Mine is too." My heart didn't race this time. It steadied. The drawer shut with a click. The room darkened. The next move wasn't revenge. It was correction. I parked under the dim lights of the secure vault branch and sat in the car for a moment. Odessa sat beside me, silent, giving me a steady nod. No fear, only resolve in her eyes. I exhaled and opened the door. The walk inside felt like crossing a line. Guards flanked the entrance, and the hum of the airlock machinery echoed down the corridor. My heart pounded. I pressed my hand to the silver pocket watch in my coat and let its weight ground me. Zeke Rivas stood ahead, arms folded, expression taut. He motioned curtly, "We've cleared a private vault for you. You may access it now." The vault door opened with a low hiss and slid aside, metal and pressure and finality. I stepped forward, alone, into a stark room shimmering under fluorescent light. Inside were rows of safe deposit boxes, documents piled on a side table, stacks of sealed envelopes, and in the center, a single box labeled Olivia Blythe. I swallowed hard. Zeke nodded from the doorway and stepped back, giving me the space. My palms were damp. This was what they said I was never meant for. I closed the vault door behind me. The locks clanked shut with deliberate finality. I walked over to the box, lifted the lid, and dared to breathe. Inside, original deeds, stock certificates, account ledgers, untouched for years. Paperwork linking my name to assets, to shares, to rights I never knew I had. My chest swelled with vindication. They'd hidden all of it. All along, it was mine. As I flipped through the documents, one set stood out: trust agreements naming me a founding shareholder of the family company. Correspondence addressed to Miranda listed her only as an authorized agent, never true owner. The ledger showed that my voting shares had been transferred into dummy accounts she controlled. She never held control, only power wielded at my expense. My pulse raced. I tapped record on my phone, voice low. They erased my name to steal my legacy. I stepped out of the vault carrying the box. Zeke tapped a button, and to my surprise, he began sending the box's contents to a corporate email list, every stakeholder, every board member, including Miranda. My phone buzzed in my pocket, documents delivered to all family accounts. Miranda's face appeared on the screen, eyes wide, guilt mirrored in shame. I turned toward the cameras mounted in the hallway and addressed her indirectly. You controlled the narrative too long. The vault tells the real story now. Her lips quivered. She tried to form words, but the flood of emails proved her undoing. Stockholders would know, banks would question, the truth would leak. I walked out, vault door left open behind me, mechanical hum fading. Back home, I placed those legal documents in my office, where the light fell just so, like a plaque commemorating the reclamation of my name. I carried the framed papers into the living room, laid them before old family portraits. The images shifted in my mind, faces I loved now reframed by truth. My phone buzzed, a message from Dad. I'm proud of you. My throat tightened, but I whispered, I never waited for praise. I reclaimed my name. I picked up the silver pocket watch, set it beside the documents, steadying myself. That vault door's click, remembered in my bones, felt like the seal on a new beginning. The drive back was quiet. Night had settled low over the neighborhood. Streetlights cast pale halos. The evidence box sat heavy behind my seat. I pulled into my parents' driveway and pressed my hand to my chest, steadying my breath. Walking inside, my footsteps echoed down the hallway. Beard stubble of doubt prickled my skin. Miranda sat on the couch, phone in hand, her face lit by the screen. She didn't look at me. Silence stretched between us and filled the room. I set the box down gently, unclasped the lid, and let tension grow. I reached in and pulled out the hidden letter from my father. It was creased, edges soft. Miranda glanced up. Juno froze. I cleared my throat. If they don't see you, point to truth. I'll always be your witness, I read aloud. My voice was calm, steady. Miranda gasped. The letter changed everything. The narrative she built, my invisibility, her power, collapsed in that moment. I placed it before them. He believed in me before you ever did. The silence fell heavy again, but the balance had shifted. Miranda tried to speak. But I raised a hand. She stuttered. You talk big now. I held my ground. You've heard me silent for years. My silence was never weakness. The words hung. Let my silence speak louder than your lies. The room watched, stunned. My voice, steady, carried truth they could not ignore. Juno broke first, tears spilling, shoulders shaking, realizing how deeply she had dismissed me. Miranda's face twisted, rage intermingled. Father moved forward, trying to calm her, but the old pattern shattered. They no longer controlled the room. I remained poised, spreading evidence, vault documents, forged signatures, internal emails. Their eyes shifted between me and the proofs. Doubt crept in. I sat, firm. The name you erase is the one you fear. I stood and gathered the evidence. My footsteps were soft but decisive. I won't stay where I'm unseen, I said. Miranda's whisper followed me, something unreadable, bitter. I didn't look back. I stepped into the night. The living room full of ghosts stayed behind me. In my car, I held the silver pocket watch. My fingers traced its rim. I breathed deeply. Fear had left the room, something stronger had taken its place, resolve. The path forward was clear: reclaim not just inheritance, but peace, respect, and truth. The sun came in soft through the blinds. My new place was small, just enough for me and the quiet I had long earned. A table, a chair, a corner kitchen. Nothing grand. But everything here was mine. I placed the coffee mug down and watched the steam drift. On the windowsill, a single plant from Zekrivas stretched lazily toward the morning light. The stillness didn't feel empty, it felt like release. I opened my journal. The pen moved without force. I wasn't writing to untangle pain, not today. I was tracing peace. I had gone through fire and come out shaped, not scorched. For the first time in what felt like forever, I breathed and nothing clenched in my chest. The storm had passed. What remained wasn't rubble, it was foundation. I opened the small drawer and pulled out the letter from my father. The folds had softened from use. I didn't read it in anger anymore. I read it like I was meeting his eyes across a room. He'd meant every word. I'll always be your witness. I thought about what that meant now. The betrayal I faced wasn't just from people. It was from a system of silence. Of choosing comfort over truth. Of letting the loudest voice define the story. I thought of Miranda, not with rage, but with a strange kind of tired understanding. She had built a world out of shadows. That's a heavy thing to maintain. I don't want her to suffer. But I won't carry what she refused to face. I don't excuse it. But I also don't let it drag behind me anymore. Growth doesn't always announce itself with clarity. Sometimes, it just lets you put something down. A knock pulled me from thought. It was light. Careful. I opened the door, and there stood Juno. No pretense. No big speech. She held out an old photo, us as kids, covered in dirt, arms slung around each other like nothing could pull us apart. She said, I didn't know how far gone we were until it was too late. We sat in silence for a while. Then words came. Not to fix. Not to erase. Just to understand, a little. We weren't children anymore. We were women who had hurt and been hurt. I didn't offer full forgiveness. But I let go of enough to breathe. She left with nothing asked for, and nothing taken. That was enough. The next afternoon, I took a long walk. I passed our old house, the porch, the swing, the oak tree out front. The yard had changed. But the rusted frame of my childhood swing still hung in the backyard. I stood behind the fence and just looked. No rush of longing. Just a memory. And that memory wasn't holding me anymore. I said it aloud, let it be past. Let me be whole. That night, back at the apartment, I pulled out fresh paper. I began a letter, not to my father, or my sister, or anyone else. To me. Dear Olivia, you kept your promise, you never disappeared. I wrote slowly, choosing every word like a stone placed just right. I listed what I'd earned: boundaries, self-worth, the right to my own voice. I ended it with one truth I'd waited years to believe: you are more than what they made you survive. I sealed the letter and wrote on the front, open when doubting. I slid it beside my journal, smiled, and leaned back. Just as I did, my phone lit up. A name I hadn't seen in a long, long time blinked on the screen.